the story begins. And two civilizations are fighting each other. There is a very dangerous war going on in this place. One civilization follows the god Nebula, and the other civilization, which is of Oak, follows the Hegemonia god. There is a war going on between these two civilizations. And someone is monitoring all these things. And Oak has physical power, and human civilization has technical power. Humans have guns and cannons, and the Oak civilization has magic powers to stop their weapons. And the person monitoring them is saying, "Is that all? You have got Hegemonia?" Human civilization attacks from the sky with fighter planes. And where the Oak civilization does a thunder attack with its magic. And this is how this war is being played like chess. And God Nebula is watching all these things on the monitor. Then he gets a notification, which says, "Would you authorize a nuclear attack in the name of God Nebula?" And the Nebula clicks on the yes, due to which a nuclear bomb now appears at this place, which starts moving directly towards the sky. And God Nebula would have pointed the nuclear bomb directly at the Oaks. And the Oaks see those nuclear bombs, and at the same time we see Hegemonia, who is watching all these things, but he says, "A nuclear attack. Do you think I didn't prepare for this, Nebula?" And Hegemonia uses interceptor missiles, which contain magic, to stop Nebula's nuclear attack. And those interceptor missiles are going directly towards the nuclear bomb, and seeing this God Nebula says, "Interceptor missile, it's a faith technology, so you prepared well." Interceptor missiles have destroyed many nuclear bombs. But one of them is a nuclear bomb, which goes into space. He is now coming down, heading straight for Oak's castle. But inside the castle the Oak Emperor is praying, and along with him there are many Oaks who are also praying. And this Hegemonia is watching and saying, "If this is reality, prayer would be meaningless." And then an energy flow starts happening near the nuclear bomb, and starts stopping the nuclear bomb. And the nuclear bomb is stopped by a hand. And at this place there is a huge giant body, which is made of energy, and it has stopped the nuclear bomb with its hands. And Hegemonia is saying that the name of this place is Last World. And anything is possible at this place. Faith and prayers in this world always produce meaningful results. Nebula is watching all these things on his computer, and is thinking, as expected, the opponent is using the Holy Oak strategy. And Hegemonia is saying to the Nebula, "Did you see it clearly? This is the newly optimized Holy Oak strategy. Are you slow? Surrendering now?" And Hegemonia is second place in server ranking. Nebula is watching all this on the computer screen, and Hegemonia is laughing loudly. But Nebula is thinking, there was a reason why he came out with such confidence. Although it is easy to increase the population due to the nature of the Orc race, it's amazing that he has already gathered this much faith. Select the sky as the largest area and conduct customized checks. Behind the scenes, prepare for technological civilization. The attempt to prepare the Spirit Chain Apostle was quite good. But it was so obvious. Let's say it's the large area of the sky, and now Nebula wants to attack the satellite, and high-mass weapons fall from the satellite, and Nebula says, "It's just the sky above your head." And now 3 high-mass weapons are coming directly downwards, and Hegemonia gets very surprised to see it, and he says, "After nuclear weapons, high-mass weapons?" And those 3 high-mass weapons go towards that giant body, and Hegemonia is shouting, "If this continues, it will hit the palace directly." And God Nebula says, "It's just not a possibility. It's a few tungsten rods, adding up the accumulated gravitational acceleration. It's too late, Hegemonia, to try to stop it." And due to that attack, the giant's body gets destroyed, and with it the Oaks also get destroyed. Due to that attack, destruction spreads at this place, due to which many Oaks are killed, and also the Oak Emperor is also destroyed, and the underground temple collapsed along with the Imperial Palace. The faith you built will disappear. When faith disappears, the apostles will also disappear. Hegemonia. And with this Nebula has won the game from first rank. But Hegemonia is very angry with God Nebula. And Hegemonia is saying to Nebula, "What the hell is this? I demand another round, because now is the start of my winning streak." But Nebula is not bothered by Hegemonia's words. Then Nebula is speaking, since he didn't surrender, I wondered if there was something there. There was nothing, right? The game itself was nothing new. I was also able to complete the achievement of maintaining first place in the rankings. Then slowly. Then Nebula gets a message, and in that message it is written, "Amazing achievement. So far, you are the only one who has cleared all achievements. Thank you for enjoying Lost World so far." And Nebula says, "End of service? Or not?" Nebula receives another notification. Lost World, which was in early beta access, is now scheduled to be officially released. Players of Nebula can enjoy the game before the official service. Seeing the notification, Nebula says, "Ho! This was early access. Is there a separate official service?" And Nebula gets a notification, "Would you like to start?" So Nebula clicks on yes. After that, Nebula starts seeing the codes. Then the scene shifts, and we see Nebula's avatar. Nebula opens her eyes and is surprised by the sight in front of her, because Nebula is now inside that game, and there is a different place in front of him. Nebula thinks it's a temple, but it doesn't look like a temple, it's a ruin, and Nebula says, "If you look at the avatar in the game, is this a dream?" Then someone from behind Nebula says, "It's not a dream, you've been chosen, Nebula." This is a woman with her face covered, and she is saying, "Allow me to welcome you." And this woman also knows Nebula's real name, and Nebula's real name is Aldine. And when the woman calls Nebula by his real name, Nebula is surprised, and he says, "This guy. How does he know my real name? More than that, what does this mean? Those shadows? What is this?" Nebula doesn't understand anything about this place, so the woman tells Nebula, "I wonder if some of the players are familiar to me. We have hidden our faces to ensure fair play. Because everyone is curious, let's get straight to the point." Then the woman raises both her hands upward, and when the Nebula looks upward, he sees the earth, seeing which Nebula becomes even more surprised, and he thinks, "The view of that continent that I have seen many times, that's right. And the name of this earth is the Lost World." Then the woman says, "Okay, now in that vast lost world, you've become a true god." Nebula says after seeing this place, "I can't hear the sound, but I feel it. There are people who are embarrassed." And the woman tells Nebula, "Lost World isn't a world that simply exists in games. It's a land abandoned by the gods due to an incident in the past. On that planet, a once brilliant civilization blossomed. Different races lived in harmony. However, for unknown reasons, the gods left it. Now to them, it's time for new gods. The game Lost World. It was created with the purpose of finding suitable new candidates for that planet. Just by trying, you can become God. It's essentially like the Lost World. At first, only shabby things will believe you. If you call out those who believe in you and rely on you, you become the only God on this planet. And you can do anything you want. All the desires you've ever dreamed of, it is feasible as a god of that world." Nebula then asks the woman, "What happens if I give up?" So the woman says, "If you give up, you will go right back to your daily life. Instead, you lose your memories of this place." And Nebula says, "What if I give up mid-challenge?" The woman says, "During the challenge, you can't give up." Nebula asks, "What happens if I'm defeated by other gods?" So the woman says, "A godly end, I'm sure we'll welcome it." And Nebula gets shocked after hearing this, and he thinks, "A godly end? It means extinction. Everyone, are they risking our lives? A reason to give up there is none." Then the woman says to Nebula, "Well, now, it's a time of choice. If you want to give up, please tell us now. For those who want to take on the challenge, you will begin your journey with selection a small area." And Nebula is thinking, it's really just like the game. It means it starts with selecting a small area, right? Rather, are people giving up already? And Nebula starts counting them. Then Nebula says, obviously the starting number of people, the maximum number of players in Lost World was 32. That means, is the final number of people 27? Then the woman says to Nebula, "Well, you can choose first." And Nebula goes over and picks out a card, and when Nebula looks at the card, he's surprised. And before he can say anything, he disappears from this place. And after this, the scene shifts, and we see a beautiful place, where there are hills, rivers, lots of trees and plants. And we see a frog in the water, which is looking at a butterfly, and in front of that frog there is also a fish. And the frog has caught the fish, and the frog is very happy. And looking at this frog, it seems that it is like a human being, it can walk on its own 2 legs. And his companion also comes to him. And this frog says, "We will have a fish dinner tonight." Then the butterfly passes by the frog, and looking at the butterfly, the frog says, "Is this a type of butterfly I've never seen before? Are butterflies important now? I'm not going to eat bugs today." And that butterfly flies and sits on Nebula's finger, and Nebula is saying, "Is he also a frogman?" A small area of insects with the lowest win rate. And the card that God Nebula gets is an Ekent card. And for now Nebula will have to live in this small area. Then Nebula says, "But it depends on the writing. Although it is backward compatible with bird, it is quite useful in the beginning. But the starting point is at the eastern end of the continent. That means that battles don't happen often in the beginning. Gaining benefits through early engagement, this means that it is difficult to use an aggressive strategy. In that sense, a race that eats insects would be a good starting race. Like those frogmen, for example. But what bothers I am the number of tribes. About 500. A large group that is difficult to detect as the first tribe. Lost World can exert influence on creatures equal to the level of faith it possesses. Faith 10. This number is too small to have any influence on this group of frogmen. What about other groups nearby? And a group of lizard men are walking in the desert, and Nebula is watching them, and Nebula is saying, "Is it a lizard man?" Lizard men also eat insects. They can survive here without water. The number has also decreased, which is actually good. To the sick. Old man. Oh my. This object is particularly badly injured. I get it. He is from the original group. He must have been pushed out in a power struggle. The more he feel abandoned by the world, the more difficult and tired he feel, just a small miracle, how to find God. But, he is such a fragile being. Well. Then. Let's start with him. After this the scene shifts, and we see the lizard man. Which are passing through the desert. And all of them are very tired, and feeling very hungry. And as soon as they see all this in front of them, they become very happy. Because there is an injured gazelle in front of them. And all the lizard men move forward to catch that gazelle. And they have caught the gazelle, and have also started eating it. And one of them, an old lizard man, says, "From what I see doesn't seem to be the case for the elderly and patients." And all these lizard mans are eating that gazelle very fast. And after some time, they have eaten whole gazelle. But they are still feeling hungry, and one of the lizard man says, "The bone marrow on these bones are also very delicious." And just as the lizard man is about to eat the bone marrow, someone snatches that bone, and the lizard man says, "That's enough. Let's leave it to those who can hunt." Then the lizard man takes all the bones of the gazelle and gives them to the injured and old lizard man. Old and injured lizard mans are happy to eat this. And among them there is a lizard man watching all this, and his name is Rak Rak, and he is very injured right now. Then a lizard man says to Jael, "Hey, Jael, are you really okay with this?" And Jael says, "What do you mean?" Another lizard man says, "It doesn't matter if they are old or young, but that guy, you know he's going to die soon." And the third lizard man says, "That's right. The wound is rotting. Actually, he should have died already. I don't know how he keeps up without falling behind. A lot of people survived because Rak Rak blocked the saber-toothed tiger. Yeah, I appreciate it. He's going to die anyway. There's not enough food." Jael says, "That seems a bit shameless." And the second lizard man says, "What? Please be honest." After this it becomes night, and all the lizard mans sleep near each other. But Rak Rak is sleeping alone, and he is in a lot of pain because he is injured. He is groaning in pain. But then Nebula's butterfly arrives at this place, and Rak Rak sees that butterfly. Then he gets up, and the butterfly starts going over a rock. And Rak Rak is watching him carefully, but then one lizard man says to another lizard man, "Look there." But that lizard man is in deep sleep, and that lizard man is saying that Rak Rak is finally leaving our group. And they all are watching, and saying, "Let us watch peacefully." And Jael is also watching this, but she is calm. And now Rak slowly starts climbing up the rock, and Rak is thinking, is this a deranged fantasy? I was the only one who reacted to see it. It's really might be so. But what I'm seeing right now means something. And Rak is still chasing that butterfly. And as soon as he goes ahead, he is surprised to see in front. Because there is a whole mountain of beetles in front of him, and now Rak has a lot of beetles to eat, which will be enough for the whole group. The scene then shifts, and Nebula gets a notification, the group of lizard man. 1102 to 1 experienced the miracle. And looking at him, Nebula says, "Have you finally recognized the miracle? Thank goodness. That amount could feed the whole group for a few days." Then the next step is, "No? Are you announcing the miracle yourself?" Indeed, individuals with high willpower can take care of things on their own. Nebula gets another notification. The Rak's hordes have recognized the divinity, the nameless beetle god. And Nebula says, "Beetle? Not a butterfly. The beetle god. Because no one has a great name from the beginning." And Nebula is watching the group of these lizard mans from the sky, and especially Rak. And Nebula says smilingly, "Rak, from now on I think you will be important to me." Of course, that goes for you too. Next day Rak is following that butterfly, and looking ahead he says, "I'm starting to see illusions again. Maybe I should follow it again this time." And Rak's friends are very happy after eating those beetles. And one of the lizard mans is saying, Rak, are you going to chase your fantasy right away?" And Rak says, "Winter is coming soon. But beetles keep appearing from cold directions. If we head in that direction like this, we'll freeze to death." And the other lizard man says, Then we should ignore the fantasy now and go in a different direction." Rak says, "I don't think we should. There is nothing in this wilderness. Actually, what purpose is there in the fantasy I am seeing? I don't know either. For now I just have no choice but to follow." And God Nebula is watching all this, and he's thinking, it's because they lack faith. It's the beginning, so there's nothing we can do. If I were to be specific, I would hear too much about faith. But Rak. And Nebula is looking at the screen of the system, and it is written on the screen, "Worm's blessing. This skill is not yet available. This skill requires a bug level of 2 or higher. Consumes 10 faith." Nebula is saying, if you believe in me, you will experience a future you could never imagine. And as soon as all those lizard mans go ahead and look in front, they become very surprised. And that little lizard man goes down below, and Rak shouts to all the lizard mans and says, "Everyone listen. The nameless beetle god, he brought us to the sanctuary." And there is a sanctuary in front of all of them, seeing which all these lizard mans become very happy. And Rak is also watching all these things smiling, and everyone is saying that those people can now live their lives comfortably. After this, Nebula receives a notification, the divinity level has increased. 122. The level of the small area bug has increased. 122. And a screen opens in front of a Nebula, and it is written, "Blessing of bugs is now a possibility." And seeing that notification, Nebula is saying, "Do you want to know for sure what I want?" Rak. "Then be my priest, deliver my will to your people. Blessing this will help you." And Nebula gives Rak her blessing, and a bright light falls on Rak. After this it becomes night, and all the lizard mans are asleep. Then a firefly flies near Rak's shoulder, and Rak hears a voice calling Rak's name. Then Rak's eyes open at another place, and Rak is surprised. Where has he reached? He's wondering, am I dreaming? But Rak hears that voice again, and Rak asks, "Who are you?" So there is a shadow in front of him, which looks like a lizard man. And that lizard man moves his hand forward, and Rak is surprised to see this, and Rak says, "Do you want to hold my hand?" And Rak is saying, "What do you want?" So that shadow points towards Rak and says, "You?" And Rak is surprised to hear this, and Rak has a buffalo skull in his hand. And Rak is watching him carefully, and Rak makes the skull wear the shadow, so that he can see his face clearly. And Rakrak says, well, you are the nameless beetle god. After this, the scene shifts towards early morning. And in the morning, Rakrak has called his friends to a place, and Rakrak is telling them all what he has seen in the dream. And hearing this, they are all surprised, and they are saying, isn't the beetle god asking you to sacrifice a buffalo? Isn't it clear what you want? To hunt a buffalo, you have to go deep into the wilderness. It's too big of a risk. But Jael, the one who brought us to the sanctuary, I want it. I just don't want to put the pack in danger. Water buffalo hunting is so dangerous that you have to risk your life. Perhaps all pack hunters should step forward. Then who will protect the rest of the week? After listening to Jael, Rakrak says, that's right. We can't put the whole pack in danger. I will go alone. As soon as all the lizardmans hear Rakrak's words, they all get surprised. And Jael comes to the front, and she says, you can't catch a water buffalo by yourself. That's impossible. Rakrak. Rakrak says, this is not about being reckless. God, he gave me a blessing. And Jael is surprised to hear this. Rakrak then points his spear out towards a tree, and Rakrak says, it's really unbelievable. When I walk up, the wound was completely healed. And my shoulders were all covered with black scales. Just like a beetle. Jael says, I admit it's a strange thing, but that is not a reason to go buffalo hunting alone. Rakrak says, yes. The real reason is. Then Rakrak moves his hand back to throw the spear, and throws the spear forward with all his strength, and that spear goes directly towards that tree, and directly hits that tree, due to which that tree is destroyed. And seeing this, all the lizardmans are very surprised. After this, Rakrak goes forward and takes his spear. And everyone is very happy to see Rakrak's power. And they all are saying, Rakrak, amazing! Have you been hiding this power? Even though it's a dead tree, until recently, everyone was dying. Is that Rakrak? Then one of the lizardmans looks in front and gets surprised. And Rakrak is smiling, looking ahead, and Rakrak tells everyone to look ahead. There are a lot of buffalo on the front. And many buffaloes are running, and Jael also sees them. She finds it impossible. A herd of buffalo that always moves to the same place. It makes no sense to get lost and come all the way here. Then Rakrak jumps from this place, pointing his spear towards the front, and says that from today onwards we will never remain hungry. And he directly attacks with his spear, and his spear hits the head of a buffalo, due to which the buffalo dies on the spot. And all the lizardmans now proceed to hunt the buffalo. And Rakrak is saying, he sent not only the beetles but also meat. After this, the scene shifts, and now it is night time. And Rakrak has hung the skulls of the buffaloes he had killed at one place. And on top of that, blood from the head of a dead buffalo is falling on those skulls. And this scene is a little disturbing, but it's okay. And Rakrak is sitting in front of those skulls, and he is saying, God the nameless beetle, please accept our offering. No matter how inadequate it may be. And all the lizardmans bow their heads and say, please accept our offering. Please accept it. And Nebula is watching all this from above, and he is saying, although it is a sloppy and clumsy ritual, what's important is sincerity. I was able to gain faith beyond my expectations. It was a decent rite, as a novice priest. When I think of the time I put into it, maybe it was worth doing this much. I'm a believer in the buffalo. It's not the god of wild grass that a buffalo eats. I needed help from other friends. By the way, eventually, did they eat the baby buffalo too? At this stage, it is difficult to expect knowledge and skills equivalent to herding. It was too much, though. The population support of this oasis is not very high. At most, the limit will be a few years. In their current state, they don't know anything about farming or ranching. It can be difficult to get through that time. Knowledge and skills. It is very difficult to realize certain knowledge on your own. It's not okay to say it directly because it violates the law of causality. It's not that there is no way, but it will take some time. Then, first of all, let's start by giving a blessing. And Nebula gives her blessings to Rakrak. After this, several days pass. And now Rak and his friends are living their lives comfortably. And Rak is saying, I had a disturbing dream last night. Jael asks, a dream? Is it an oracle? And Rak says, I don't know. It's ambiguous. The altar was shaking precariously in it. In the pond of blessings that have protected us for many years, no more fish came up. The ground was so dry that no root plants could be found. Jael says, we're not there yet. And Rak says, I know. Jael says, and there is nothing to worry about because God takes care of us. And Rak says, I believe in God too. But God's will, it often comes across as difficult at us. If you are lacking in understanding its meaning, we will betray God's will. I'm afraid of that. Then when Rak looks at the front, he is surprised, and he asks Jael to come up and see too. And Rak is asking Jael to come up quickly. And Rak points to one side with his hands, and says, look at the front, and when he looks at the front, he sees something, and seeing them Rak says, I understand why the altar shook. These are the guys who kicked us out. And this group of lizard mans is very large, they also have dangerous animals. Jael is surprised to see all those lizard men, and seeing them Rak says, blue scales. Like ours from before. That big guy. And above all, there's no way it's normal for someone to ride a monster like that. Looking at the numbers, it looks like the entire tribe has arrived. And after listening to Rak, Jael says that means our hometown. A wetland with green leather, that would mean it was completely devastated. It looks like that Manon has eaten up all the wetlands. By the way, do they know about this place? Well, this wetland is located on terrain that cannot be seen until you climb up. There is a possibility that they may pass by without knowing. Then a lizard man says to the lizard group people, this is the sanctuary of the nameless beetle avatar. It's a green-skin tribe, huh? You can't even take a single step here. But this does not make any difference to the leader. And Rak is a little disappointed seeing Yur's action, and he says, today's patrol was yours. Don't worry. This may also be God's arrangement. And Jael says to Rak, what do you mean by that? I think God deliberately caused this situation. Are you saying that He is testing us? And Rak says, maybe this isn't a test. Maybe it's a mission. I think it is a mission to accept and save those who were originally with us. And Jael says, but even so, that guy over there, if he was a guy who would understand something like that, why did they continue to drive out weak tribe members into the wilderness? Rak sees Nebula's butterfly, seeing which Rak says, is this also God's will? It's hard to dare to think beyond this. I'll just do what I can. Then Rak starts walking towards them, and God Nebula is watching the whole thing. Rak understood exactly what I meant. Rak's tribe and the Blue Hide tribe must be unite. For population growth and technological advancement. What's a bit strange is that Rak made that decision on his own. Is this because of his high willpower? And Rak's willpower is 14. And God Nebula thinks, is this guy, the blue-skinned tribe coming out of the wetlands, did you decide that it was my will? Not mistaken. A leader with high self-will, if only I could instill a firm belief. Rather than allowing the player to control everything individually, I will be able to express my intentions more efficiently. The leader is saying, do you guys live at this place? And you are saying, we live here. This is our land. But it doesn't matter to this leader. And he says, so what do you guys have? But Ur says that it is none of your business. And then Rak comes in front of him and he says, there are bushes and trees and hunting here. And there is an avatar as well. When he hears the leader, he gets surprised. After all, which avatar is Rak talking about? And Rak further says, this place is the domain of the nameless beetle avatar. And the leader says, looks like this guy is also talking incomprehensibly. Well, it doesn't matter. Leave this place. If you leave now, I won't attack you. I don't know how many more of you there are. You can't beat this group of people. Since ancient times, if you are a leader, you should know how to do the math, right? Rak is not bothered by his words. He puts his spear forward and says, I don't want to fight with you. And hearing this, the leader starts smiling. And Rak tells them, per people who have lost their homes, can come into the arms of God. Then God will take care of you according to His will. And as soon as the leader hears Rakrak's words, he starts laughing and says, "You are the one who doesn't know how to do the math." And Rakrak says to him, "Do you think so? But you don't know God." Rakrak puts his spear forward and gets ready to fight. And the leader tells Rakrak that you are just talking nonsense. He then moves forward with his animal to attack Rakrak. And Rakrak is praying to God to give him strength to fight his enemy. Then the animal moves forward to attack Rakrak. But then Rakrak's spear breaks. Rakrak gets surprised after seeing this. And that leader starts laughing, and now that animal attacks Rakrak with its claws. But then we see a notification, and it says, "Civilization Clash." 2 different tribes came into contact. Experience points for both tribes increased significantly. And this notification comes to Nebula, and Nebula feels this was a close call. And Nebula gets the notification again. You've been paying a lot of attention to one tribe. These tribes are now part of your territory. Laria, Lizard Man level 11. New skills are available. Do you want to use it? And Nebula clicks yes. Then just as the animal is about to hit Rakrak, then a bright light comes towards Rakrak from the sky, and as soon as the animal attacks Rakrak, Rakrak disappears from that place. And seeing this, the leader is surprised. How can Rakrak avoid his attack? And all this happens because of the nebula. And that leader is saying, "How can you avoid that attack?" And that leader again moves forward to attack Rakrak. Then suddenly Rakrak's eyes start glowing, and a status window opens in front of him, and in it is told about this leader, that this leader has level 2. And its skill is breeding. And Nebula feels, Rakrar alone is enough to handle this guy. The problem is the goal was to subdue that strong little monster, Drake, but Rakrak's status window opens, in which his level is 2. And his strength, intelligence, every stat is more. And Rakrak thinks that it will not be too difficult for me. Rakrak then moves forward to attack the animal. And his skill opens, which is Strong Avatar, which gives the user an additional state called Divinity D. 1D equals 200 times the maximum value of power that can exist naturally. To put it simply, the power of Rakrak now is 630. Rakrak catches the animal and throws it upside down, seeing which all the lizardmen are surprised. And with this Rakrak has defeated that leader. And Rakrak's friends become very happy. But still the leader does not give up. He again grabs his knife, and stands in front of Rakrak. And he moves forward to directly attack Rakrak, but Rakrak defeats him with a single punch. Then Rakrak said to that leader's associates, "Who would want to fight with me now?" But everyone gives up in front of Rakrak, and throws their weapons on the ground, and bowed down on their knees in front of Rakrak. And Jael thinks it's over now. I can't believe it. Rakrak is thinking, did the Avatar just come? Through my body? It felt like I was dreaming. After this it is evening time, and everyone is sitting at one place, and everyone is talking among themselves. What? Are you the ones from our tribe who went out into the wilderness? Why are your scale colors so different? That's right. By following a nameless beetle avatar we changed and became stronger. Otherwise we would have died wandering in the wilderness. Avatar is? No, the Avatar's power is so immense. Are you so stupid that you don't even know what happened today? But, is there a lizard man with that kind of power in the world? I never imagined something like that. Jael is talking to Rakrak. Was it right to do this? So Rakrak says, what do you mean? So Jael says, they can come back again. Our population has increased about 6-fold. This place will deteriorate rapidly. Hearing Jael's words, Rakrak starts thinking, then he says that we have to leave from here. And Jael is surprised to hear this, and Jael says that we will have to go to the wilderness again. We can't just wander around the wilderness without any answers. And Rakrak says, no, the answer will definitely lie within them. The answer was sent by God, through our old brothers. After this we see that animal of the leader. And that animal is captured by Rakrak's people. And the name of this animal is Manon. And some lizard men are trying to take care of him. But it is becoming difficult for them, because Manon is attacking those lizard men. But because Manon has a rope tied on his leg, he is unable to do much. But then Rak comes to that place, and seeing Rak, Manon remembers how Rak had defeated him. Because of that he starts getting very angry, but he is tied with a rope. But Rak comes in front of him, and gives Manon something to eat. And seeing this even Manon is surprised. And Rak tells him that you can eat it. Then Manon starts eating the tuberose, and Rak's friends are surprised to see this. And Rak caressing Manon's head, and he says, "Are you asking for more? Should you just be quiet instead?" Rak comes to Manon with many tubers and gives them to Manon, and Manon eats those tubers with great pleasure. And Rak, looking at Manon, is saying, "There must be a point in God keeping you alive. If you want us to be together in the future, you need to know how to be patient." Manon. Then Manon's stomach is full, and he sits comfortably, and starts to rest. And while leaving this place Rak is saying to his friends, "If Manon causes trouble again, please let me know." After this, Rak and his companions are sitting at a place, and Rak is saying, "There's a skill to make something like this?" And another lizardman says, "If it weren't for that guy's stubbornness, I would have made better blades a long time ago." And Jael gets surprised after listening to his words, and Jael asks, "What do you want to say?" So Lizardman explains, "Because of the tree." And Rak is also surprised to hear this. Then the Lizardman starts telling, "In the process of making, we use a lot of wood." And Rak says to that Lizardman, "Is it made by lighting a bonfire?" And that Lizardman says, "No. You need to burn wood to make special fuel." And hearing this, Rak understands and says, "I get it. I'll think about it and let you know by tomorrow." And as soon as that Lizardman is leaving, there comes another Lizardman, who does not have one hand. He comes to Rak and says to him, "I heard you are looking for a guide." And Rak knows this Lizardman, and that Lizardman smiles and says, "Yes, I'm a wanderer. It's an old body wandering looking around for a place to accept it. And then, I learned how to see the way." Rak and Jael both get surprised after hearing his words, and they say to him, "Learned how to see the way?" Stargazer tells them, "At least the lands that won't let us go hungry. I have a few in mind. I can't guarantee whether it will still be the same." Rak says to Stargazer, "Other wanderers and tribesmen, does that mean it could be located there?" And Stargazer says yes. And Rak further says to him, "If that's the case, it's okay. If they are against us, all you have to do is defeat them and take it." Then Stargazer says, "Indeed, if you have that kind of will, you can trust it." And Rak says to Stargazer, "What about you? How can you give me faith?" Stargazer doesn't say anything after listening to Rak. Then he points his finger towards the sky and says, "My answer is the sky. It's not just the sky." Then after this it becomes night. And Rak says, "So you meant the stars." So Stargazer says that you are right. Then Rak asks Stargazer, "Do stars move?" So Stargazer says, "I don't know. As you said, the stars move. But I have my own rules. If you know the paths the stars take, you can follow the path of man without being confused. I will tell you the movement of the stars now. If you check for a few days, will you gain faith? Then I will check again at the same time tomorrow." Then Rak says to Ur, "What's going on? Did Manu cause trouble?" And Ur tells, he seems a little dissatisfied, but, since I was giving him meals on time, he became more gentle. And Rak feels good after listening to his words. Then he further says, "Jael said we need a way to move around without starving. Today, Rak watching you tame Manon, who has a good taste for food, I suddenly thought of something. Wouldn't it be possible to tame him? With something else." And Rak says, "Something else?" So Ur says, "For example?" And he points to one side with his finger and says, "Can you tame those kind of animals?" And this happens to be buffalo. Then a notification opens, and there is a skill in it, named herding. After this, Nebula is speaking. It is said that human history split into two branches at some point. One is to do farming, the other is to do pastoralism. Although the source of this information is games, anyway. Farming would be more stable. In fact, major civilizations also started by large rivers, but the tribe I choose was lizardmen. Strong physical. High environmental adaptability. What are they? Need more if it would be pastoral rather than farming. And in this pack the technology that will give you wings. Ironware. Now all the lizardmen are making iron weapons together, and seeing those weapons Nebula is saying, they can finally produce basic ironware. For now, it may be softer than well-processed bronzeware. For Rakrak's tribe, who had no choice but to use stone tools, it will be a great help. Also, another unexpected gone. Astronomy. Of course, it is still too primitive to be called astronomy. But in the distant future I hope they put it to good use. Then Rakrak looks towards the sky and says, "It's just as the stargazer said. Stars are the guides of the sky. So now I have no choice but to do what I think." After this, Rakrak has called all his friends to one place, and Rakrak is speaking to all of them. A long time has passed since God brought us to this land. We even met our brothers again. We could have kicked them like they did, we could have chosen to live on our own. Then we could have lived for a longer time in this land. Of course, those who were kicked out would have died in the wilderness. But that was wrong. God wanted salvation, not exclusion. That is because it benefits more people. By dawn we will leave here. Stargazer, come out. This man has been telling me the movements of the stars for several days. And I confirmed that what this person said was true. The Stargazer will be our guide. From now on, we will entrust the Stargazer to guide our path. Let everyone know. Well then, explain it to everyone. About where you will lead us. Stargazer points towards the sky and says, after dawn, when the morning sun rises we will head to the right side of the sun. We will keep walking for 10 days straight, then another 15 days to the right again along the rotten lake. 3 days along desolate mountain paths and valley paths. After walking like that we will find our destination, an endless forest. There are many wild beasts there. It's an area where there are packs of other races as well. And Rakrak laughs and says this means that it is a good area to live in. Thanks. You may go in now. Then Rakrak starts climbing over those bones, and all the lizardmen start looking at him. Then Rakrak says to Ur, "Why didn't we eat any of the water buffalo we caught yesterday?" And Ur says, It's just that, I wasn't hungry at the time. And hearing this Rakrak tells him, everyone worked hard to catch the water buffalo. Yet you didn't eat any. For sure it's true that everyone worked hard, but, and Ur says, I guess I wasn't particularly hungry, if I hold back now. Later, I wondered if I could eat it when I'm really hungry. That's what I thought. Rakrak becomes happy after hearing Ur's words, and tells him that you did a very good job. And Rakrak further says, Ur, you wanted to eat water buffalo right now, but you held back for the future. Right. Excellent. Ur becomes happy hearing Rakrak's praise. And Rakrak tells him to keep working like this. And Ur also says yes. And he adds, as long as I don't starve I would like to do that. Rakrak then asks another lizard man to bring a spear. And Rakrak says that you have done good work, so I should reward you. And Rakrak gives the spear to Ur, receiving which Ur is surprised, but he is also happy. And Rakrak gives him the spear, which makes him very happy. And Rakrak says to other people, other than that, those who followed your words. Those who resisted their desire to eat what they wanted. Since you are worthy, I will give you a spear. And Rakrak also gives spears to his friends, after which they all become happy. And the other lizardmen are all thinking, this is great, and we want it too. For that we will also have to do very good work. And Jael is thinking after seeing all these things, I was wondering what you were going to do. I guess this is what you had in mind. Rakrak then goes ahead and picks up the skull of a buffalo. Then he says, okay, now you all come forward one by one. Those who are true warriors. And Rakrak wears a buffalo skull, and says, may gods be protected with you. Our journey ahead will succeed only with the spirit of patience, and waiting that you have shown me. Then Rakrak also makes Ur wear the buffalo skull. Then he says to her, you are now a bone warrior. This is God's will. After some time, Rak makes all his true warriors wear skulls. And Rak is saying to them, "Now we must leave this holy place. But God's will is with us, that's why we're not bound to a place anymore. Everyone carves the nameless beetle god into your head. I can't say it won't be hard. But let's move forward without fear. Just as you endured the desire to eat the water buffalo, if you endure and move forward, it will benefit us. It will benefit you. Go ahead. Endure and move on. The nameless beetle god will be with you." I said, "Gods will please forgive me." Dear nameless beetle god, after listening to Rak's words, God Nebula is saying, there's no need to apologize. If you didn't do that, I would not have chosen Rak as a priest in the first place. Rather than even achieving the growth of a new entity, it went even better. Also, Rak, even your special abilities finally saw the light. You have done well so far and have not disappointed my expectations. Rak. From now on you will be a full-fledged start. Then the next day, the entire Lizardman tribe has now set out on their journey. But Manon is very tired, and he falls unconscious. And everyone starts looking at him. And they come to know that all of them are also very tired now. So Rak tells them that we will have to rest here for a while. And Stargazer also says, we can just rest at this place for a while. And Rak tells everyone that right now we are taking a short break. And Rak is saying, if we go down this mountain path, will we get to the place we are talking about? Will I gain strength if I rest? I don't know what's going to happen, so I guess I should take a break. I barely ate anything. Is it now 3 days on this road? The whole group is very tired. And we are running out of food. We can only hope for another miracle from God. Then suddenly a lizard man comes running and says nervously, "A flock has appeared. Ahead of us. They are scaleless bastards.